The day Alex finished building a small wooden bridge in his backyard, he had no idea it would start the most ridiculous HOA battle his neighborhood had ever seen. What looked like a simple project soon turned into a shocking story about rules, power, and a mistake the HOA would regret. This story begins with a promise. By the end, the same HOA that tried to charge Alex $350 would wish they had never knocked on his door. Alex lived in a quiet suburban community where houses looked almost identical and lawns were trimmed like clockwork. Behind his property ran a narrow drainage creek. It wasn't large, but it divided his backyard into two sections. For years Alex simply ignored the small strip of land on the other side. But one weekend, he decided to change that. He spent 2 days building a beautiful wooden bridge across the creek so he could finally use the extra space. The bridge wasn't huge, just wide enough for a person to walk across comfortably. It looked natural, almost like it had always been there. Neighbors walking their dogs stopped to compliment it. "Looks amazing," one said. Alex smiled. He felt proud. What he didn't know was that someone else in the neighborhood was watching carefully, someone who loved rules more than common sense, and 2 days later, a letter appeared in his mailbox that would start everything. The HOA had noticed his bridge, and they wanted $350 for it. Alex read the letter twice, confused, because the bridge sat completely on his own property, so why were they trying to charge him? The answer would soon reveal something far more ridiculous than he expected. Alex stared at the letter again, certain there had to be some mistake. The HOA notice was printed on official letterhead and stated that the newly constructed bridge violated a community modification approval rule. The fine was $350, but that wasn't the strangest part. The letter claimed the bridge affected shared neighborhood aesthetics. Alex laughed out loud. The bridge wasn't visible from the street. It sat behind his fence, hidden by trees. Still, Alex decided to handle it calmly. The next evening he walked to the monthly HOA meeting held in the community clubhouse. Inside sat the HOA board, including the president, a woman named Linda who had a reputation for enforcing rules with unusual enthusiasm. When Alex explained the situation, Linda adjusted her glasses and spoke with confident certainty. "Any structure built within community boundaries requires HOA approval," she said. Alex blinked. "Even if it's fully inside my property?" Linda nodded. "Yes." Several neighbors exchanged confused glances. Alex stayed polite. "I checked the property map before building it," he replied. "The bridge doesn't touch HOA land." Linda gave a tight smile. "That doesn't matter. The rule still applies." For a moment, the room went quiet. Alex realized something important. This wasn't about rules, it was about control. But what Linda didn't realize was that Alex had already done his homework before building the bridge. And the documents he had at home were about to turn this small HOA complaint into a very embarrassing mistake. That night, Alex went home and opened the folder where he kept all his property documents. Inside were the official land survey maps he received when he bought the house. The lines were clear, every inch of the bridge stood firmly on his property. Still, something bothered him. Linda had sounded too confident at the meeting, so Alex decided to double-check everything. The next morning he contacted the survey company that originally mapped the property. A technician arrived 2 days later with professional equipment and bright markers to confirm the boundaries. Within an hour, the results were obvious. The bridge was completely legal, but then the technician noticed something unexpected. One of the HOA walking paths near Alex's backyard had actually been built slightly inside Alex's property line years earlier, only a few inches, but legally, those inches mattered. Alex stared at the marker flags placed along the boundary. He hadn't planned on starting a bigger issue. But suddenly he realized something important. If the HOA wanted to enforce every tiny rule, then every tiny boundary would matter too. Alex took photos of everything: the bridge, the survey flags, and the walking path crossing into his land. For the first time since receiving the fine, he smiled, because the situation had just flipped completely, and Linda had no idea what she had started. At the next HOA meeting, Alex walked in calmly holding a folder of documents. Linda immediately addressed him. "Have you brought payment for the violation?" she asked. Alex placed the survey papers on the table instead. "I brought something better," he said. The board members leaned forward as Alex explained the new survey results. The bridge sat fully within his property, but that wasn't all. He pointed to the map showing the HOA walking path crossing several inches onto his land. The room fell silent. Linda frowned. "That path has been there for years," she said. Alex nodded. "I know." He spoke politely but firmly. "If we're strictly enforcing property rules, then technically that path is also a violation." Several neighbors whispered to each other. Suddenly the situation didn't look so simple anymore. Alex continued, "I'm not asking for money. I just want the $350 fine removed. Linda hesitated. For the first time, she looked uncertain, but instead of resolving the situation, she made another mistake. She refused. If you want the fine removed, she said, you can appeal formally. Alex slowly closed the folder. All right, he replied, but this time his calm smile meant something very different, because if the HOA wanted to play by the rules, Alex was about to follow them perfectly. Over the next week, Alex prepared his appeal with careful detail. He submitted the official survey results, photographs, and property maps to the HOA board. Everything clearly proved the bridge was legal, but Alex also included something unexpected, a formal notice. It stated that part of the HOA walking path was technically built on his land. He didn't demand money. He simply wrote that if strict rule enforcement continued, he would request that the HOA relocate the path completely outside his property boundary. The board members suddenly realized the problem. Moving the path would cost thousands of dollars, and dozens of neighbors used it every day. During the appeal hearing, the room felt tense. Linda looked frustrated as Alex calmly explained his position. I'm not trying to cause trouble, he said. I just want fairness. One board member quietly whispered to another. Finally, someone asked Linda a simple question. Why was the bridge fined in the first place? Linda hesitated, because the honest answer was obvious. It shouldn't have been. The board members now understood that a small decision had turned into a much bigger situation, and the easiest solution was becoming clear. But Linda still struggled to admit the mistake, and that stubborn decision would lead to the most surprising twist of all. A week later, the HOA board called a special meeting to finalize their decision. Neighbors filled the clubhouse, curious about the strange dispute that had taken over community conversations. Linda began reading the official statement. Her voice sounded far less confident than before. After reviewing the documents, the board had concluded that Alex's bridge did not violate HOA regulations. The $350 fine was officially canceled. Several neighbors nodded in agreement, but Alex waited quietly, because he knew the story wasn't finished yet. Linda continued reading. The HOA would also review the walking path boundary issue. If necessary, adjustments would be made to ensure property lines were respected. The message was clear. The board had finally realized the risk of pushing the situation further. Alex stood up and thanked them politely. I'm glad we could resolve this reasonably, he said. And he meant it, because Alex never wanted a fight, he only wanted fairness. But as the meeting ended, one board member quietly approached him. You handled this better than most people would have, he said. Alex smiled. Sometimes the best way to solve a problem is simply showing the truth. And that truth had completely changed the outcome. What began as a $350 fine had turned into a lesson the entire neighborhood would remember. Alex kept his bridge, the HOA quietly adjusted the walking path boundaries, and Linda, once known for strict rule enforcement, became noticeably more careful when interpreting community regulations. Neighbors continued walking past Alex's yard, often stopping to admire the small wooden bridge crossing the creek. It had become an unexpected symbol in the neighborhood, not of rebellion, but of fairness. Alex never bragged about the situation. In fact, he rarely mentioned it, but people knew the story, the bridge that almost cost $350. And the rules that nearly cost the HOA thousands. Sometimes the smallest details reveal the biggest truths, and in this case, a few inches of property and one simple bridge had changed the way the entire HOA handled its authority, because in the end, Alex proved something important. Rules matter, but fairness matters more. And sometimes the biggest mistakes happen when power forgets that simple truth, and that was the final twist in this unbelievable HOA story. If you loved the drama, don't forget to like, subscribe, and drop a comment sharing your thoughts. It really helps this channel grow.